Hey, everybody. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to have a special guest. It's going to be amazing, so you want to definitely stick around and listen to that when we get that in a second. But, Rosie, what do you know, man?
Hey, what's up? First of all, you didn't even ask how I was doing.
I'm sorry, man. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Hey, did you know that in 1976, a Japanese porn actor crashed an airplane in a kamikaze-style attack to kill a multi-millionaire leader of the Yakuza?
Wow.
He crashed, and he took an airplane, kamikaze style. He even dressed like a kamikaze.
Into his house?
Into his house.
He was a porn star?
He was a porn star.
What year was this?
1976.
Oh, wow. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
That
so
was long after the kamikazes were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He even got praised by one of the kamikazes that still was alive from the kamikaze squadron. He was like, it was good technique or something like that.
But he didn't kill the guy. So.
No, he hit him. He hit a different part of the house that the guy was in.
Oh, man.
So there you go.
That's a crazy did you know.
Crazy did you know.
Just another one of the side effects of porn. Don't do it. Don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, have you so this episode, have you ever wondered what the FBI, the CIA and Walt Disney have in common?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, if you haven't, you're going to learn because our guest is going to go over a ton of stuff about this. It's an amazing podcast. So sit back, grab a coffee, and enjoy.
You're listening to the All Out War podcast.
Well, what's up, Warriors? Welcome to another episode of All Out War. I am Turner, and I'm in the studio with Rosie. What's up, Rosie?
Hey, what's up, man?
I'm really, really excited about this episode. We have a special guest on the podcast for this episode, and her name, she goes by The Sharp Edge 1 on Twitter. She's an investigative reporter. She's also on YouTube with HiveMind and also at hivemind.com with the I's replaced with 1, so H1VEM1ND.com. And she also has a podcast that she co-hosts called Dig It with Corey's Digs and The Speaker. It's a podcast you can find on all podcast platforms. I want to welcome to the podcast The Sharp Edge. Sharp, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'll tell you why I'm so excited that Sharp is joining us on this episode for our listeners. She wrote an amazing article that you can find at coreysdigs.com, and we're going to put all these links in our show notes so you can go back to them and find them. It's called Exposing the Keys to Disney's Operations and Agenda. And it's an amazing article that really just talks about, puts together all of these aspects of Disney and links to the CIA, the FBI, and Freemasons. And so it fits really good with our series we've been going through on secret societies because, the Masons obviously are in there. But we wanted to have Sharp come on and just talk about this article that she wrote. But before we get into that, Sharp, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into investigative research and kind of your journey?
Sure. So I went to school to be a journalist, and I hated it. That didn't last very long. I actually ended up going into marketing, but that was years ago. I had no idea I was going to be getting into this, and I was what we call a normie.
Right.
For probably up until about 5 years ago. It was really when my personal awakening started. I'm a believer. I've been a Christian and been saved since I was 9, but I really wasn't awake to the truth of the evils of this world and the plans that they had that were already in motion until about 5 years ago. And it just started. I actually was I became aware that my grandfather had a Freemason's ring. And I knew nothing about the Freemasons, actually. I actually even thought they were just, a kind of a fraternity of, people that like the Shriners, and, they like their image was, to me, it seemed like they were
just a bunch of old dudes, guys hanging out.
And want to help their fellow men. And so I just wanted to learn more about my grandfather, actually. And I decided to start researching into the Freemasons and my grandfather's affiliation with them. And he lived in a small town. And so there was just one little Masonic lodge in that town, been around since like the 1800s. And pretty much every man in that town was a member of that Freemasons lodge. And it kind of probably was very much like a fraternity. I don't think my grandfather really had much awareness of what the upper levels of the Freemasons were about, because he was just a very strong Christian man, really, really positive influence in my life. And I can't possibly imagine that he would have had any affiliation with them if he had any idea of what they were truly about. But nevertheless, I didn't really find out too much about my grandfather's affiliation with them. I did, however, find out a lot about the Freemasons, and that was my awakening, the beginning of my awakening, learning about their agenda, about Luciferianism and secret societies, and it led to so many other rabbit holes. Right. And I went on this journey for years, actually. And it was a very lonely, depressing time because, like I said, I was a normie. I had this, I kind of had it all, and, this whole image. And I was very, I'm ashamed to say, but I was pretty superficial. And this awakening wasn't just about me learning about the world. It was really more about me learning about me and reshifting my priorities. And so it was like a spiritual awakening was happening inside of me, and just lighting this fire inside of me to do something. But on the outside, it kind of looked like I was going crazy. So it was just a very lonely time.
So were you able to share any of that journey with anyone in particular, like, like a friend or a spouse or anyone like that?
Yeah, I did, but it just didn't, it wasn't well received. It was just misunderstood. Yeah. And so I just kind of learned to stop talking to people in real life.
Hide your power level.
I really didn't. So I just kind of went on an internal struggle with God. I was having a lot of dialogue with God during those years, like, why are you waking me up? And I just didn't really understand what my purpose was. I knew I knew I was being led to do this. I knew I was being led to do all this research and learn the truth of, these secret societies and what's going on in the world. But I just didn't understand why and what God was preparing me for until after, Trump won the election, which I honestly didn't think was going to happen. I voted for him. But I knew the election was rigged, and I just really didn't think that was going to happen. I knew what was on the line. I knew they really, really needed Hillary to complete their plan. And so I was just shocked when Trump won, but happily surprised.
Right. Yeah.
And then I just I don't know if you guys follow QAnon or not, but when I found out about QAnon and started seeing people kind of coming out of the woodworks and speaking out about these things that I had been researching all these years, I really found this sort of sense of community of people who were openly sharing this information and getting the public awake to the truths. And then that's when it kind of dawned on me that that's what God had been preparing me for all those years, all those lonely years in research. I really felt it was just really pressed on my heart that this is why, I was preparing you is not just to wake you up. It's to be of service and share this information that I've been kind of downloading on you all this time. And so, it was just really pressed on my heart to do that, to start speaking out publicly. I think I started a Twitter account, and I guess it was January of 2018, and I've been going ever since. And just writing threads, writing articles, and then we just recently started a website and a podcast and YouTube channel. So,
yeah, it's amazing when I think about your journey. All of it was preparation. It's so true, because I don't think that if you would have had all of the information, and if you feel like I do, like I feel like I don't know anything still. The more I learn, the less I feel like I actually have a grasp on. But the fact that it was preparation, that what you do know, now there's so many more people that are willing, and like, especially like when I think of recent current events, like with Epstein, it was kind of a joke about like when he died, when he committed suicide, in air quotes there, everyone questioned that legitimately. Like, how could this guy do this? It couldn't have happened this way. And that really put, the quote unquote conspiracy theorists in the front and center. And they were actually legitimately taken, seriously for a moment.
Well, now we're all conspiracy
exactly
theorists.
Right.
Even the normies don't believe that he did it.
Right. Yeah. And then the FBI comes out and says, that if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a danger, and they're...
Well, they said that before,
right?
Which was interesting. Always thinking of the timing of a lot of this stuff is they come out, a month before, preparing almost like an excuse.
Yeah,
something's good.
Hedging their,
I was going to say, it is so interesting what you were talking about, the QAnon stuff, and just seeing so many people. And I guess maybe we can move on to the article after this, but it really is really cool. I got into conspiracy theories pretty young. I'm still fairly young. But I was going to say, it is definitely really lonely, because there's no one, everyone just thinks you're crazy. You don't have to talk about it. But now, like you said, with the election and just so much stuff being exposed, it really is like a really cool community of people that it's I don't know, it's just a really cool community. And it's like not that I need any justification of like other people saying I also agree to confirm what I know, but it's really cool. So it's been
feels good. It does feel good to have some support. It's tough when you're alone. And I think about all these the truthers, who really didn't have that, and went in decades past,
right.
They were always
probably, always felt alone, but it's just amazing to have a community of people where we really support each other, lift each other up, and, help each other out. So we're blessed. We are.
And I was going to say, I guess maybe this might be a little good way to segue it, is another thing that's been really cool. Particularly, we did an episode on this about Pizzagate, just barely touching the surface of everything, but that was one of the things that I got into doing some I guess anonymous open source crowd the research that went in that, and it was so cool to see people that really don't want to, not that I don't want to say this by people that make a name for themselves or stuff like that, but it's really cool to see this underground almost community of like anonymous anons that are all doing this to expose so much darkness that's been there, that there's strength in numbers, and it turns out there's a lot of really good people that do amazing research, and they're so skilled at putting all this stuff together.
Exactly. I think that there really is strength in numbers, and when we compile all of our efforts together, it just has such a greater impact for the cause. So I appreciate working together with so many awesome anons and people like yourself, and sharing the information that we have and working together to get it out.
Absolutely. So how about we use that as a way to start talking about Disney? So,
all right.
Well, we should probably make a disclaimer. If you love Disney and you go to Disney as a family, this isn't about that.
well,
I mean, if you want to give them your money, that's between you and your money. But yeah, I just know a lot of people. Like, I took my family to Disney years ago. At my little kid, I have 3, and they're older now. But yeah. But I just want to put that disclaimer out there. This is not an indictment of necessarily saying accusation. This is just stuff that...
Well, that's what you say. Well, so that's Turner's opinion.
No judgment of anybody who loves Disney or, has been to Disneyland or Disney World.
Right.
Not any kind of judgment on them.
Right. I just don't want that... I don't want that letter from the lawyer. That's all. That's all I don't...
Yeah, and really, the way I phrase it typically is just, if there's anyone who does not believe any of the claims that I make in my writing, that's okay. I please, I encourage you to do your own research and come to your own conclusion.
Yeah.
Because, and we may not come to the same conclusions, but we'll still be better for having that knowledge. So,
exactly.
So you start off with talking about Disney's at the very beginning. The Masonic key is what you title that section.
Right.
So let's go into that.
Okay, so let me back up before he started with the Masonic connection. Disney, he grew up in an abusive household, and this is pretty well documented. His father was pretty abusive, and it was a pretty loveless sort of scenario. So I feel like, and I'm reading between the lines here, interpreting myself, but I do feel like Disney found the kind of family he was looking for when he joined the Demolay. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But it's actually like a children's organization that's part of the Masonic family. So he joined when he was 19. Okay. This is an organization that it's for kids between 12 and 21. I pretty much look at it as a way for Freemasons to recruit. So it's a little creepy,
Right.
having a Freemason sponsored boys club, basically. So he started when he was 19. The Order of the Demolay was founded by a man. His name was Frank Land, and he was a 33rd degree Mason. All the boys in Demolay called him Dad. And he named it after Jacques Demolay, which was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. So the Order of the Demolay, although it's a children's organization, it's part of the family of Masonic organizations and heavily connected to them. And I think at such a young age, given Disney's past, that this organization played a significant part in his views and his belief system and his loyalties, etc., because it kind of gave him the family that he was looking for. And Frank Land also had an artistic background. I think he went to like it was Kansas City Art Institute or something like that. But so I'm also reading between the lines here, but I think Frank Dad Land gave Disney the leg up that he was looking for, that he needed. And Disney felt some loyalty there. I think that that's how much of, an important role that the Masons had in Disney's life as an early young man. And he did get the highest accreditation at Demolay. It was the Legion of Honor, which is basically, it corresponds with that of a 33rd degree Mason. So, I'd always heard that Walt Disney was a 33rd degree Mason, but I had never seen the proof of it. And that's why I wanted to do that research and kind of find out for sure for myself. And it turns out, it's pretty much the equivalent of a 33rd degree Mason, the honor that he received at De Molay.
So he would have received that before he was 21 or around that age, I guess.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
I was going to say, that's pretty interesting that he only had 2 years to ascend the ranks, so to speak, if he started at 19.
Right,
Which
exactly.
is something to be said,
Pretty
maybe.
high speed.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if the initiations were the same that they are through normal Masonic, initiation rites as they go up in there.
I really don't know. I don't know that much about the Order of the De Molay as far as their achievements and moving up in the ranks.
And I was going to say, that's kind of stuff they hold close to the chest anyway, so we probably won't ever.
Hence the
really...
secret society. Right?
Yeah. But yeah, so that did play an important role in his life. He actually went on to, when he started the Walt Disney Company, they actually started making comic strips for the Order of the De Molay, and that were printed on their national newsletters and so forth. So,
wow.
He had they had a big impact on his life that he carried. And then, it wasn't long after that he was kind of propelled into, fame and notoriety. I mean, he received the De Molay Legion of Honor in 1931, and then by 1935 he was already a worldwide name, household name. He went to do his European tour and meet with the British royal family and the Pope and Mussolini and H.G. Wells and all these people. He was still in his early 20s, so
right.
These people had a huge impact on him as well, as far as his perspective on the world, their agenda, and that so forth. I think he carried that also onto his vision for the Walt Disney Company too.
I was just going to say, it was really interesting. I mean, just two of those four names. Well, just as an aside, the British royal family, and there's so much to be said as far as the globalism and just all the tentacles of just so much stuff from them.
If you literally went on a who's who of globalists tour
right.
back in
the Pope,
the British royal family, yeah.
He even hit Mussolini, which is insane to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that really did shape his perspective and his view, and what he wanted for his vision for Walt Disney Company.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's really interesting, the infamous Club 33 as well, which is we talked a lot about the 33rd degree Masonry, which is the highest that you can get, and also there at Disney World or Disneyland rather. I'm sorry.
Well, both. They're at both. There's a Club 33 in Disney World as well. Yeah, I'm almost positive.
Yeah.
So.
which is I'll just go real quick for the people who don't know, is a very exclusive bar that I remember reading about this, 10 years ago or something, and it was like a rumor at that point. I remember reading rumors, but now it's out there.
Yeah. You can Google it; it'll come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag on that. But I think back in the day, it was definitely very secretive. So I would imagine that it's pretty. There's not a lot going on there now, but I wonder what happened back in the day when that club was opened up for their exclusive members.
You say that there's a 14-year waiting list just to join, which is crazy to think about. That there's people waiting, and I guess it's a really expensive club to join. You have to pay a high fee.
Yeah, it says $100,000 initiation fee, which is
right.
Yeah.
And they claim that I think that they originally had 33 sponsors or something like that, and that's where the number 33 came from. Okay. Yeah, right. I mean, it's plausible deniability, I suppose, but
you have the other part that's even better.
So I think, considering his Masonic past and his loyalties, as I've kind of described, it's really a familial sort of thing for him. I think he really was paying homage to his Masonic ties with that club. And it's not a coincidence that it's on the 33rd North Parallel. And the address is 3030 Royal Street. And, numbers are super important to the Freemasons.
Sure.
And secret societies kind of in general. I know that you guys have been doing like a series on secret societies, and I'm sure that there's, a lot of them are kind of into numerology and have certain codes and numbers and so forth. But 33 obviously is a huge number of importance to the Freemasons. This is my own personal theory. I can't say that, that I've read this in any kind of Masonic texts, but I know that they do have a lot of the upper, tiers of the Freemasons, the 33rd degree and above and so forth, have this sort of occult knowledge. And I know that they really do follow closely, King Solomon and that story. To me, it makes sense that the 33rd North Parallel, the most important place to them would be, Mount Hermon, which is also on the 33rd North Parallel. And that is where, it states in the book of Enoch where the 200 watchers or fallen angels had descended on earth. And I personally believe that's part of their occult knowledge that they really kind of have steeped in their hidden knowledge that they like to withhold at those higher tiers of Freemasonry.
Yeah, we totally geek out on all the Nephilim and stuff like that. So we're totally with you on that stuff.
Yeah, I studied a lot about, it fascinates me too, like ancient history and biblical history. The more what fascinated me the most is the more I studied about ancient history and the more it validated what the Bible had said. And it just really was just a huge confirmation the more I would research that kind of stuff. So
I was going to say that's so important, and we always try to do it on our show, is bring it back to through the lens of like biblical truth. Like the Bible is the ultimate authority on truth, and like you said, the more that you read about different how do I say it, esoteric teachings of these guys over here, these guys over there, and it all seems like you said, it all just validates stuff that the Bible has been saying from the start, as this is evil, or Paul preached against this thing, or that thing or that, and it's all just verified when you come back to the Bible. So it's right. Definitely with you.
And
on
I think
that
that's part of the reason why it's hidden knowledge, is because they don't want any kind of validation of what the Bible states.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if they can keep people biblically ignorant from the real truth, and they can give them this sort of pseudo truth, if you will, which is a weird statement, I guess, but this sort of partial truth, then they can keep people led into, and then there's power in it too, because it's Luciferian, it's satanic. So there's power attached to it, which is sad, and it keeps people embraced into it. But so it's pretty apparent that Disney had some pretty strong foundation in Masonic,
esotericism.
I believe so. That's my opinion and perspective, just looking at the evidence. So, and if anybody doesn't agree with that claim, I encourage you to, research it for yourself and come to your own conclusions.
Yeah, try to prove her wrong.
That's fine. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. So what about moving on to Western intelligence even? We tease that. You had a bunch from the FBI and Walt's connection to the FBI. Could you go into that?
Sure. I honestly, what I love about doing these digs is I learn things that I didn't know before. And I really didn't know that much about his FBI connections. I was kind of fascinated to find out. But yeah, he worked really closely with them. He was, an informant for them. He helped them, during the Red Scare. He was, kind of looking for communists within Disney and within Hollywood and helping them out with that. He also really it was kind of like Disney was running propaganda kind of for the FBI. He would get input from the FBI on how to design his Tomorrowland. He would get input from the FBI on how to do some Mouseketeer episodes, TV episodes that would promote the FBI.
Yeah, that one blew my mind.
Yeah. So it was kind of like more of like a propaganda arm for the FBI, one aspect of it. He also, would just the FBI would have just free reign, for personal and official matters, anytime they needed. So yeah, he worked really closely with them on a lot of things.
I tip my hat to him in smoking out the commies. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, he had a personal vendetta because there were some kids, some of them that like went on strike, and he felt like it was because they were part of that.
Right. I was going to say, I do remember now, or they're always, you can still find them now, the World War II banned Disney cartoons that they have back then. Like, I remember one of them is called like Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips or something, like super, and it's super caricature of like Asian, or I guess specifically Japanese people during the war, but it's really, I don't know, I think they're funny, and they're super propaganda, pro-American, offensive. You people nowadays would definitely say that. Yeah. But I was going to say, I had known part of this, and before I had read this, I didn't know anything about the FBI, that he had done anything with that. But I did know about the CIA, some bits of it. Could you go into that?
Sure. The connections to the CIA are even deeper and creepier. But so back then, I don't think people were very aware of the CIA at all. The FBI was really more of the intelligence, operation that people knew of. And,
right.
But the CIA was very hush hush. So these operations that he did back then, that was not for the public eye. And I don't know how much he was aware that he was involved in these things, but the Disney company was connected to several different CIA projects and operations. It all started with Project Paperclip, which after World War II, we brought over a bunch of Nazi German scientists, and it was initially just to debrief them and then send them home. And then when they found out how much information and knowledge these guys had, the intelligence community and the Defense Department did not want to let them go. And so Alan Dulles, offered several of these, Nazi scientists over to the CIA, which a ton of projects stemmed from. And one of those, being, probably the darkest and worst of all would be the MK Ultra project. But going back a little bit, so one of the Nazi scientists from Project Paperclip, his name is Werner von Braun. He went on to assist in the Apollo moon landing. And so Disney worked directly with von Braun on several Disney-related TV shows that were sort of like the propaganda for they wanted to get public awareness and support for a moon landing. Right. And so von Braun worked with Disney directly to come up with some TV shows, Man in Space, Man in the Moon, Mars and Beyond. And those were sort of kind of seeding the minds of the population to prepare them for the moon landing.
Are you saying that Disney filmed the moon landing?
Hey, I don't go into any of that.
I'm just kidding. That is insane to me that von Braun and these guys are working alongside and helping him as he's making propaganda films. I mean, it just blows my mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think of like, okay, if this happened then, is it still happening today? And what does the Little Mermaid have to do with this, or the Lion
Right.
King, or like, is there something else happening there that I'm not even picking up on? That's just
There's subliminal stuff. I don't even get into that in the paper, but you could research that on your own.
Yeah.
With all the subliminal stuff in the cartoons. But
There's a lot of sexual
Oh, yeah.
innuendo and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
yeah. But so some other operations that the CIA was running around the same time under the same guy, Alan Dulles. One was, Operation Mockingbird, where they had not several, but like thousands of CIA agents and journalists that worked for them. Basically, again, promoting their viewpoint, spreading propaganda. And Disney owns ABC. ABC was most definitely part of that. So they were affiliated with Operation Mockingbird as well. And basically just disseminating the narrative that the CIA approved of. So, yeah.
If I could just stop you, I was going to say one of the things that is really interesting to me, there's a guy that does it really well. There's this podcast called Clandestine where he breaks down current movies and stuff like that all have funding or directly engaged with the military apparatus of the United States. Like, just as an example, Transformers, which just to kind of prove if people don't think that
Right.
this is still going on in some aspect.
It's definitely still going on.
Right. Like, anytime, I guess just as a very blanket statement, anytime that there's a war scene or something like that where, how do they get all these, how can they afford to rent all these Black Hawk helicopters, something like that.
Right.
If a director or a film company production team wants to get any kind of help from the the Air Force for this, or drone footage of Langley headquarters or something like that, they have to go and they have to submit their scripts and everything before production even starts, and get the they have the CIA has their whole press. I'm not sure what the exact name of it, but
just like an approval process.
The approval process, and people that just read scripts and TV shows and everything and say, okay, if you want to use us, you can, take this part out, take this part, move this. And they've even rewritten parts of movies to make people, I'm trying to think of it as an example, Transformers or something like that. Michael Bay is obviously super pro-America, which is really cool to see. But, if he had a bunch of Navy SEALs or something like that look silly in a movie,
right,
the Navy wouldn't like that.
Right,
so they would, to people listening, that's kind of what they would say. We would say, hey, change this up, or, make it the Army, make it a bunch of Army Rangers or something.
You're totally...
I provide proof of that in my report. There was a FOIA request for documents that we received from the DoD and the CIA confirming that they backed and influenced the production of hundreds of movies and TV shows. So it's just validating. And Disney was part of that. There's many of those were Disney movies.
Right.
Man, Rosie, you're making me not like my favorite movie as much, Top Gun. Top Gun is all about the Navy.
Gotta tell you, man. I mean, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, me too.
But yeah.
Well, the downside of kind of this awakening process and learning this information, it's great to have this knowledge and to, be better for it. But it does bum you out because, you're like, wow, they've ruined everything.
Right.
Yeah, even Disney. So
yeah, you're like getting a peek behind the curtain, right?
Yeah, it is. It's disheartening, but how can we make it better if we don't even know?
Acknowledge it, right?
Right. Exactly.
I was going to say, if you could go into, and this is probably one that a lot of people may have heard of that listen to this, that you had a bunch of stuff with MK Ultra and some of the stuff. Could you go into that? It is crazy.
Oh, yeah, and I don't even touch the surface on this. Is like really just like the basics as far as that project goes. But MK Ultra is a mind control project that stemmed from Project Paperclip. It initially was started as a form of interrogation, but quickly morphed into something completely else, with regards to mind control. But and it's dark. It's really dark. If you do decide to research this, and I did, during those years, those lonely years, it's dark. Really put on the full armor of God when you're researching that, because it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. But so they would take subjects and use methodologies to manipulate that individual's mental states through all kinds of torture, including drugs, chemicals, sleep deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and I'm sure a whole bunch more. But and the connection to Disney is kind of twofold. Many self-proclaimed victims would say, and you can research this on your own, would say that Disney films are a staple in the mind control programming, especially that of children, because obviously the movies appeal to children. But especially, for example, say Alice in Wonderland, it's really, it helps them to detach from reality and accept this mind control programming that they're going through. And it's so widely spread that, it's something that they could watch and reinforce that programming throughout their whole life and maintain that programming. So it's claimed that, Disney films were, directly related to mind control programming of, the victims and the subjects of this MK Ultra program. And another connection is that since it was originally used for interrogation purposes, a lot of the tactics they used are similar to that of the ones they used in the Kubrick interrogation manual, which was also declassified. And there's actually a form of interrogation known as the Alice in Wonderland method.
Yeah.
Which is just like MK Ultra, it seems, where they're detaching the interviewee from reality in their interrogation. So, bizarre stuff.
To say the very least, as well. I was going to say, this is, and for anyone that may be with the mind control and stuff, and the as you were talking about the fracturing, the goal to ultimately fracture a psyche of a person to basically create a alternate personality that they ultimately could control.
Right.
You
can make Manchurian candidates.
Exactly.
You can make secret operatives that don't even know that they're spies.
Right.
Yeah.
They have some part of their subconscious that's they're not even aware of.
Right.
You create sexual, sex slaves. All kinds of nefarious purposes for creating these mind control victims.
Right, and so I guess part of the methodology, or their hope, if you will, so to speak, is they get these kids, they create this schism, and then the child doesn't know, grows up, and then they watch an Alice in Wonderland or see an advertisement or go shopping or something like that and see, Alice or something that represents it, and then boom, split happens. And they're not even aware of their thing. It's
like what the Catcher in the Rye,
right?
The book that was caught, with
all the assassinations.
Yeah, assassinations. Yeah. So it triggers them, and it's all.
And that's how it's designed, is to, have something that's so, widely spread, like Disney films, to be able to maintain that and reinforce that programming. And, you can, again, I encourage your listeners to just do their own research. There's like a ton of information on who people suspect may be mind control victims, especially in Hollywood. You know, you kind of watch them as children. They start out as musketeers, and then later on they look like they're under some sort of mind control, and really very overtly sexual. You know, for example, say Miley Cyrus, or
Britney Spears, or
Spears. Yes.
I heard an amazing theory on her, though. This was crazy about Britney. This is just hearsay, so I feel weird talking about it, but I'll say it anyways. I don't care. That because she supposedly was a believer at young age, that when she got all wrapped up into all of this, whether it was Illuminati or whether it was mind control, whatever it was, that there's a fight going on inside her, and that's why she keeps ending up in these mental institutes, because it's literally an internal fight that's going on with her.
Right. I've read a lot about this project, and from what I understand, I think it's like in your late 20s or mid 30s or somewhere in that range, where your brain starts kind of changing. And so a lot of times you'll see that breakdown of the programming happening in that time frame, where memories start resurfacing and so forth. And if they don't get them back into a hospital where they can reprogram them, Yeah.
And I was going to say, this is the only thing I knew about the CIA, but this is so crazy when I read it originally, that it's not just the CIA and trying to get Disney to do propaganda for them, or help them with this mind control. The whole story of how Disney World was even started is,
I know, right?
Absolutely insane.
Insane. I was surprised by that one too. So I learned that one too when I was researching this, and this is based on a book written by a journalist and author and a historian, and he does a lot of books on exposing the CIA. This was one of them. And so he tells the story about how Wild Bill Donovan and his team of attorneys helped Disney purchase Disney World. And so when they were scouting out for the property of Disney World, they knew that if the residents became aware that they were building Disney World there, property value was going to skyrocket, and they would probably have difficulty getting some of those people out, and like some people would have a problem with them building there. So they did this covert operation with Wild Bill Donovan. If your listeners are unaware, Wild Bill Donovan was the head of the spy organization that eventually became the CIA.
The OSS, yeah.
Yes, the OSS. And so him and his team of attorneys helped Disney purchase this land that was going to be Walt Disney World. And then they set up these fake cities with
it's so crazy.
with sympathetic people to the cause in those cities, so that there wouldn't be any kind of pushback on Disney owning that land and building there. And eventually residents found out, they got wise, and they had to come out and say, yes, we're building Disney World, and the property values skyrocketed. But yes, so that was the original plan, is to, help them. And so why would they have a stake in it is my question, really. Unless, Disney is running some kind of operations for them, unless there's some kind of payback for that, So that's kind of why I go into that, is I'm curious to know what their stake in Disney World was. But, so Disney World, even up into this day, has a close relationship with intelligence communities. Disney is one of the leaders, and actually the nation's largest single commercial application of biometrics is at Disney World.
Oh my goodness.
And even after 9/11, the government was seeking advice from Disney on, intelligence, security, and biometrics. So that kind of tells you, I think it's kind of like, they are steeped in surveillance, and the intelligence community has such a close relationship with Disney that they might share information.
I was going to say, it seems like if you think nowadays of, and it completely makes sense, because what is one thing in America that everybody in the world knows about? I mean, other than sub-Saharan Africa, some place like that wouldn't know about, they might even know about Disney World, but you're going to have, it's not just, a specific demographic of people that go to Disney World. It's working class families, in Missouri that, save up and they want to go take the family to Disney World, or you have foreign dignitaries bringing their family to Disney World. So there is everybody there for the for this private surveillance,
for the observation.
Yeah, to be observed, and I'm sure there's a lot of spy work that happens in Disney World. Great place.
Actually, a lot of Disneyland employees have gone on, or Disney employees have gone on to take roles in the intelligence community. So executives from Disney going over into Intel. So there's a lot of spillover there.
Right.
Yeah, you see that in a couple different industries right now, telecom, and they end up working for something in the federal government that's gonna,
or their former intel agencies that go over and work in a industry that you wouldn't think of. Why would they need their expertise?
Right.
Why are they getting this amount of money to go be the security, the head of security at some place?
Yeah, Verizon.
So I mean, they just have so many connections to the intel community. It's not just about propaganda. It's also about, spying operations or surveillance, mass surveillance, and then, dark programs they have some sort of connection to, like MK Ultra. So,
well, as dark as all of that is, the part of this article that put a knot in my stomach that I just get, it just grosses me out, is the last section of the article that you wrote about with the pedophilia key. Oh man. And I mean, the timing of this right now in that regard is amazing, considering all that's happening right now with human trafficking and that's being exposed. And that.
Right. And, what got me started on this, this article to begin with was that, I was keeping my eyes on Epstein and that story, and other anons and private, investigators had not private investigators, but investigative journalists.
Sure.
What I was trying
Citizen
to say.
Journalists. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. They have uncovered so much, and they uncovered this Disney cruise line going and sponsoring a snorkeling venture to Little St. James, Pedo Island, which is bizarre. So
to say the least, yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to elaborate on that? I didn't want to.
Oh, I guess I was going to say, sure.
Yeah, our listeners don't really know.
I don't usually talk about this, but I did put it on Twitter before it got Epsteined off of Twitter. I happened to stumble upon, that was me. That I happened to find, it was really random, and that they sponsor a cruise. On one of the Disney cruises, they offer this snorkeling expedition that you had it here, Captain Nautica's snorkeling expedition. And the thing that really got me is it's only for kids. And basically it just says it right there. And I was going to say, I try to remain as humble or whatever as possible. I just looked up cruise lines, did a really simple cruise line search of, hey, is there any cruises that go to this island? And it popped right up that Disney was advertising that they had, a thing for children that goes to Little St. James Island. And the thing that really struck
Great
out.
job finding that.
Thank you.
Right?
I was going to say the thing that, at first I got kind of worried that the power of Disney was going to come after me or something from that. Yeah. But, I mean, as something that's as someone, not myself, as an objective observer of this kind of stuff, Disney, Epstein, just think about this. Epstein is big enough of a name prior to, he got arrested in 2015 for child sex trafficking. So you would think that if Disney, said, they're aware of the billionaires, the people at the people that run this, you would think that they would look through their cruise line thing. Right. Do we have anything that happens to go here to this pedophile that just got arrested, 2015, and to still have it on a website that they're just freely advertising is just absolutely mind blowing. That last time I checked, it's still there. You'd think that they would wipe. Blows my mind. You'd think they'd go through and even change, take out the name of it if they still wanted to hire this. It looked like the Captain Nautica guy was I'll use the term independent contractor that along one of the stops was an option. Mm-hmm. But you would think that, Disney would not want to be associated.
There's not much vetting going on there. At the very least, it raises concerns about safety practices of cruise lines in general.
Exactly.
There was also some anon found that there was some maritime law that basically at sea, they weren't required to report if a child went missing or if there was actually some sort of sexual molestation of some kind or, misconduct or, abuse.
Mm-hmm.
They did
the maritime laws are very lenient. I don't know about that, but I do know that that there's no way of seeking compensation if your child dies or is missing, and it's the fault of the cruise line.
Wow, I mean that
because the maritime laws are set up to where it only pays for, I believe it's like your loss of your work and also your funeral costs. But there's no way of seeking compensation for negligence on behalf of the cruise line if your child is lost or missing. Lost or dies and it's their fault.
Right.
So
I was going to say, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think that someone proposed a bill to do an amendment to that law this year. I keep checking. I don't think it's passed. I think there's a huge lobby with the cruise lines that are, don't want it to pass.
Because that would take out so much money, and they would have to.
Well, insurance would be insane.
Just to make sure. And I was going to say, I don't want to denigrate any. If anyone is listening to this that works on a cruise line, I don't mean to say this, but it doesn't seem like I've known maybe one or two people that I went to college with that worked summers on a cruise line, and it wasn't a Disney one. But given some of the next stuff we'll go into, I would hasten to say that Disney has very strict hiring policies, or they do a really good job to weed out people that work for them. But a lot of the people that, these guys that said they worked on cruise lines are like, I was 21. I got on this cruise. We just all got drunk on, we worked a day shift. We just partied, underneath the cruise at night. And there's a bunch of just people that, that working these cruise lines that are just, doing crazy stuff out in, international waters and stuff like that.
And I read a lot of anecdotal stuff like that too. And, also I've found out, that a lot of people have gone missing, between 2000 and 2014, it was nearly 200 passengers that went missing on cruise ships. And as far as, what happens on cruise lines, sexual assaults are like the most widely reported crime that occurs on cruise ships. So, I'm not trying to discourage your listeners from going on cruise lines, but I guess it's better to know this information, you know?
Just pack a gun with you
Be
if you're
prepared,
going on a cruise
you
line.
know?
Yeah.
Just be extra prepared and safe and watch your children.
Yeah.
And don't go snorkeling to Pedo Island.
Yeah.
It's like the mouth of the beast, you know?
Yeah. So,
Bringing kids right to him.
I know,
He doesn't have to
man.
do the hard work.
so I do follow QAnon and what they post, and so Q had posted this connection of the Disney Cruise Lines with the snorkeling venture to Little St. James, and then also in that same post had posted 2 photos, which there's a gentleman, I think his name is Rusty Shackelford, who has done some amazing, like, really high def drone footage of Epstein's Island for us, and he had taken some footage of these entrances that they look like they're kind of dug into the hill of that island, and with like double door entrances, like basically they're leading down into an underground facility.
Yeah.
And so Q had posted a connection between that cruise line and the snorkeling venture to Epstein Island, with a picture of those entrances to the below ground facilities, which is so disheartening and crazy, and just made my stomach drop when he did that. And I when Q did that, and I posted that on Twitter, and then in my comments, another Anon, high IQ Anon, had posted another photo of the from Shackelford's footage of these like, it was like a ventilation system, like this really industrial sized ventilation system that would need, that would be for a large underground facility, just basically confirming that was, what that was for. It was like dug into the side of the hill there. And then Q responded to that, confirming, that's what that was. So
Right.
And there was a cement truck that was
shipped over.
Right.
shipped over. Yeah. So what do you need a cement truck, right? And
I was going to
Exactly.
say, just as kind of an aside and maybe a lightning thing, lighthearted thing, I was going to ask, I saw this thing comparing, which was really interesting, about Rusty Shackelford, that he was actually John McAfee. Did you hear about that theory?
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Apparently,
I was wondering, I'm like, who's able to get a drone over there like every day? That's awesome.
Because apparently the timing when he was going through, John McAfee did, for people who don't know, he's skipping, trying to evade a murder charge. I can't remember which country it's from. I think last I remember he is in jail and then he got out or anything. But he started tweeting all this stuff about the CIA going after him, and you can make that of what you will, but he basically said, these people are after me, I'm going on the run on my boat, and he was in the same vicinity. And apparently there are some photos being taken on his boat of like all these drones, and so I guess the timing was really interesting. So,
yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah,
I know that Shackelford did some drone footage when the FBI were raiding Epstein's island, and that just went viral. Like all of the other news agencies were picking up his footage. So I was like, oh, nice job, good on you, Shackelford.
yeah, that was really entertaining to watch, because when they caught sight of the drone, they were trying to cover the windows with like cardboard boxes.
yeah, that was so funny.
but it was interesting, that one where they I remember people were tweeting at I think it was like the FBI. They're like, hey, here's a screenshot from right before you guys got there where there's a computer, and this is before the video footage of you guys getting to the room. Someone removed a computer
before they got there.
Before you got there. You might want to go check it out. So it's, I guess, hearkening back to what we were talking about this crowdsourcing of just this craziness that people, the power of
wokeness.
Yeah, and really just uniting, not being, off in our own worlds, but
exactly.
being, working together. Yeah.
And
awesome.
trust. There's not a lot of trust in the system anymore. I mean,
no.
So
And I was going to say, maybe to wrap this up, the one thing that you started off this section with that we talked about Disney Cruise Lines and all this stuff with that. This one bothered me a lot. The first part that you had talked about. Could you?
Yeah, I can talk about it. And this is my perspective and my opinion. It's not fact. We know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But and if you research Disney, there are stories of him personally being involved with pedophilia. And I did not include all of them because a lot of them were like unnamed sources and so forth. But the most credible, I did include the most credible of the stories, which is this story about Bobby Driscoll, who was a young actor and very close to Disney. And several of the Disney employees would attest to their relationship, which is insinuated it may have been inappropriate. But and so I get into that story a little bit about Bobby Driscoll and his close relationship with Disney. He was one of the early stars in Disney's films, and then later on, like so many of these other child actors that are obviously displaying signs of trauma from child abuse, he as a young teenager became a terrible drug addict and ended up dying from overdose because of that. So it's possible. I'm not saying it as fact, but it's possible that there was some kind of inappropriate relationship there between Bobby Driscoll and Walt Disney. I'm sad to say.
Yeah, and I was going to say when you had talked about the veracity of this claim in particular, you had said you mentioned here Kenneth Anger, who was I don't know, I don't want to say he was more. I know he was a film director, and if I remember correctly, I think he was I want to say that he was a film guy, so he was in the business, so it leads to some credibility of these people,
Yeah, he wrote an expose, just kind of like exposing all of these Hollywood secrets, and that was just one chapter of the many. So yeah.
And I was gonna.
It kind of sets the stage for this culture of pedophilia.
Exactly.
And that has carried on to this day. So there are several Disney execs who have been convicted for molestation, pedophilia, etc. And then it goes all the way down to low-level employees running pedophilia rings and getting busted. And there's just numerous cases. I don't even list them all. But again, I would encourage your listeners, especially if you're really struggling with this and having a hard time believing this, don't believe what I say. Go do your own research and come to your own conclusions.
That's right.
I personally believe that pedophilia is both significant and systemic in Disney. Yeah, so.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why, and it always goes back to pedo. Like all of these things, like you've got government officials, executives in corporations, and
the BBC,
and the royal. I mean, why that? That's what I don't get. Is it
twofold, in my opinion? Two key factors to that. Number one, if it has anything to do with the intelligence community, pedophilia is one of the ways that they're able to blackmail and control. With honeypot pedophilia scenarios. That's what Epstein was all about.
Yep.
So
talk about FBI informant.
Right.
Or if they can get that on you, some kind of footage or photo of you with an underage person, child, then they've got you. They can control you now. So that's the intelligence community's connection to pedophilia, but the Luciferian connection to pedophilia goes way, way, way back, to the beginning. And, we're with child sacrifice and pedophilia, because, children are just the most innocent of all of us. And really, in their view, have the most power because of that innocence, and they want to exploit it and use it.
I was just saying, this just came to me. I don't know why I never thought of this before, but one of the things that I was going to say that the tactic of Satan has always been to take the truth and twist it in some way, and we see that throughout the esoteric teachings and stuff like that. So it makes sense, as you just explained, that children are the most innocent beings. They're still born into sin, that thing, but we're not talking, about, salvation at this point, just through the actions and everything. And that almost seems like to sacrifice a child who is, innocent
I would say vulnerable. They're the most vulnerable because they can't defend themselves. They can't protect themselves.
Well, this is what I was getting at, is it's a twisting of Christ's sacrifice.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a blaspheming of an innocent person dying, that they get some. So it's, again, taking this vulnerable and it's like the ultimate FU to God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that they see it as, they gain the most power from it.
Yeah.
And, this is not new. I mean, they've been sacrificing to children to Baal and Moloch for since the beginning.
Yep.
So
you can go over to Israel today, to the Valley of Hinnom, and it's where they would sacrifice to Molech, and they would beat these drums to drown out the screams of the human sacrifice, the child sacrifices that they were.
Right.
And it's just horrible.
Yeah. And I mean, it was happening all across the world, and which is something, the Aztecs did it, the African tribes did it. I'm sure in Asia, they did stuff like that. So
yeah.
What a way to end.
So let's end on a high note. Sharp, what do we have coming up for you? Anything that you can pique our interest in so we can follow you on social media? And
well, we just wrapped up an important interview with Zach Voorhees, the Google whistleblower, which was awesome.
Oh, wow.
He's really brave to come out and talk about what was going on the inside at Google and YouTube, and to present some really damning documents and evidence. So I commend him for that. And so you can find that podcast on Corey's Digs YouTube channel. We've got it also up on our Hive Mind website. We've got some little clips, short clips. We break down that interview on our Hive Mind YouTube channel. So check those out. And then I'm working on something right now, just totally different. So yeah, I'm working on a dig right now, which everybody's working on Epstein digs and doing an excellent job. Corey, I know there's some other really great people. Amazing Polly's awesome. Quigley does some great stuff on YouTube, or on Twitter. Digging into Epstein. So I kind of wanted to take a break from Epstein and just go on a totally different tangent. I've wanted to talk about this story for a while, and kind of like my Disney article, I like to do a historical perspective and like a broad scope perspective to help you put things into context of what's going on now. So I want to take a look at RICO and what how RICO has been used in the past as a template for how it might be used presently with an organized criminal syndicate like the Clintons, for example. So
that is
so yeah. So it's an interesting story because it's all about the mob in New York, right? So I'm going to get into that in my next dig.
That I look forward to that. That is awesome.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
And hopefully you have some protection when you go up against when you start digging into that kind of stuff.
I got the full armor of God on me right now.
Amen. That's right. That's awesome.
Sharp, thank you so much again for your time and for agreeing to come on at such short notice. And just everything. Thank you so much for everything that you do and spending the time with us. And
absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me on and for sharing this information. I'm just, really thankful that you guys, are putting this information out there.
Absolutely.
We totally appreciate everything you do. You're amazing. And
if you have an open invitation anytime you want to come back on.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
So we will catch you next time. And
all right.
We appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the All Out War podcast today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to know more, you can visit us on the web at alloutwar.us, or you can find us on Twitter at alloutwarcast. Hey, thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.